Alright, what is up? I don't know how to do lighting. This is my first one of these or something. That's at least better than it was. Anywho, what is good? I'm going to introduce you to my way of thinking. No. Here we go. Okay, so actually something we just had. C. Derek Varn was talking about this. All efforts to render politics aesthetic culminate in one thing: war. War and war only can set a goal for mass movements on the largest scale while respecting the traditional property system. Walter Benjamin. I don't think that's true. I mean, I think religion can do it as well. What does it say here? Set a goal for mass movements on the largest scale. That's a pretty good thing in general. I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to contest his claim. Just be like, religion? Anyway, but it comes up in what I want to talk about. So, experimental unit is this thing I've been working on for 2 years about. It's a long, convoluted story of what all happened. I was doing stuff at Occupy Atlanta and met up with somebody and started doing volunteering at WRFG.org. Sorry, just at WRFG, which is this radio station here in Atlanta. So now I have this radio show. That's me. I need to do it again now that I have the longer beard, don't you think? But anyway, so yeah, this is an offshoot of my creativity. And allows to see your screen. Wait, what? Is it showing or not? Maybe it's not. Has it not been showing? What's the one that I wanted? It's gotta be this one. Yeah. Oh, was that was it actually working? Okay. So anyways, experimental unit, I started working or volunteering at this radio station. I got my own show in 2018, and even independently of that, so flashback to 1973, aka, I don't know, 2008, 2009, I got lent the book Society of the Spectacle. I don't think I have it here, but I can just search up that bad boy. Yeah. So in case you are not aware, there's this book called Society of the Spectacle. And I just got lent this book by a teacher randomly. Like, it wasn't even some, like, grand conspiracy to be like, you know, we're going to poison their fragile little mind. Although it sort of was, because that teacher did a bunch of, like, mind-bendy philosophical movies. Like, we watched Memento and Waking Life and I don't know what else. And we read a bunch of, like, weird shit. Like, Pirandello. He showed us anyway, so it makes sense, I guess. But funnily enough, I got lent this book, and then the main person that I got into was Jean Baudrillard. Oh, that's gone. I feel like this is the horror movie. I'm just showing you like the exposition. It's like, this is the equivalent of driving into the forest. And like, this is the guy. It's so funny. Like, you're driving into the forest, right? And you're like going to go to the cabin in the woods. And like, this is the guy at the gas station who's like, you shouldn't go there. And you're just like, what does that guy know? Right? Anyway, pretty fucking funny. So yeah, Jean Baudrillard. Cool guy. I moderate the Reddit. I'm not doing enough with this, to be honest. I should be doing way more with this. Please don't tell me I responded to this. Okay, thank God. I can't even read that. I wanted to go here. So we have here Baudrillard's collected works. So like I did this. Like Baudrillard 2. That's me. I have this thing. Wait, I have this thing on my Telegram. Let's see if I can find it. I think I can actually. So we go here. Check this out.
Don't be telling me about Baudrillard. I'm the Baudrillard fucking master.
So, I mean, I love juxtaposition. I love illusion. So there's your Rick Roderick Pulp Fiction Wombo combo. So what to show you about Baudrillard related to experimental unit? Well, I mean, the first thing... yeah, I mean, we could do the entry point this way. Like, I've been doing it in very ramshackle ways and getting, like, lost and confused, and I'm sure it's going to happen again. But I'm just going to keep trying with this, like, movie thing, like being on camera. So, where this is just me. The guiding thing here is just, I love this song. I like to interpret pop songs as though they're also about mysticism or something. I'm really happy. Anyway, this one, everywhere. Oh, so the first line of this song is like, turn it inside out. Okay, so we gotta see. Not what we wanted. Genius. Genius, genius, genius. Turn it inside out so I can see the part of you that's drifting over me. Okay, so sit back and watch as I proceed to turn myself inside out for your viewing pleasure / open source intelligence / opposition research. I mean, how could you oppose me, right? That's the whole point of absolute exploit, but that's getting way ahead of ourselves. I'm just closing all these like duplicates and thinking what it is I wanted to show you. Oh, right. So we'll dive in through the Baudrillard. So this is my Substack. We have an archive. What was it I wanted to show you here? Right, Transcommunism. Because then there's also this. So basically, I gave a talk at a Baudrillard conference in 2018. So independently of, what was the first thing I mentioned? I don't know. The aestheticization of politics was the very first thing. And then what was the second thing I mentioned? Did I mention anything else? I mean, the radio station, right? But so, yeah, that was the point, was that even before I got my own radio show in 2018, like I'd been into Baudrillard for like at least 8 or 9 years. So steeped in Baudrillard. It's funny because I am not a super big reader otherwise. Like I read like various things, but it's really random. So yeah, I don't claim to be the most well-read person. That's not really the point. But so this concept called transcommunism is built out of Jean Baudrillard's philosophy. So I was thinking, but that's why I keep mixing everything up. But so the point of the story was that in these essays, at the speech that I gave to the Baudrillard conference, herp derpty flurply derp, that's what they say. This is what I gave, again, September 6th. So this, they truly are. Anyway, so transpolitics, everything's political. When everything's political, politics loses its ability. So I guess it's an interesting thing because like language fails in general, but this is also an additional aspect where there's a historical movement, which is it's either making it the case or it's making it super obvious, at least to Baudrillard, that these terms are bleeding into each other, so that the way that we often say that things are defined by their opposite, things are sort of losing their opposite. So the political, in terms of like what's the opposite of the political, the apolitical or something, right? So then you could talk about, say, the disappearance. You could talk about the extermination, right? The extinction. You could talk about the endangered, right? You could talk about the precarious, apolitical, right? Because it's like, where is the apolitical? If there is no apolitical, then what does politics mean? Basically. So then replicating every field. So right. So I was just talking about Ma Frickin, C. Derek Varn on Twitter talking about still no response, by the way. I don't believe. I'll refresh. I'm countering my inherent fear of notifications for your viewing pleasure. But anyway, again, all efforts to render politics aesthetic. Okay. My rebuttal to this is I'm not rendering politics aesthetic. Like, I don't, first of all, like, I'm thoroughly nominalist. So this is, I already have this up. So, like, sorry, James Lindsay, but like, I'm not nominalist, right? Because nominalism is similar to nihilism. Any term is self-refuting, maybe you could say. I have to work through a lot of things there. But regardless, like, the stance on language is complicated to begin with. So this whole idea of like I'm making the politics aesthetic or something like that, or like that's going to be a problem. Like the idea for me is not like even to put that into words is in a way aesthetic, right? That's a sentence that has to be composed, and the words have to be chosen in part for their aesthetic qualities. So like, yeah, it's not to me clear what that means. And like, I can be told that I need to read more, but I'm just skeptical. And then anyway, then it goes into war. But oh yeah. So I don't know if there is what would it be? Like a trans for warfare, like the trans marshal, maybe. Trans military. That would probably be it. You could have trans war. There's no reason not. Oh, that would be awesome to just generate. Yes. Just like imaginary war manuals that are like, yes, that's so great. And they just have neologisms in them. So, oh yeah, you can just take old ones. You sort of can. But anyway, I'm just talking about like making a troll where it's just like you construct like military strategy technology, like theory, and then you just make some of the words nonsense, but you try to play it off like you're creating words and you have this like new science of whatever it is. So people like really want to try and figure out like what it is that what you're saying means, but it very explicitly doesn't mean anything. Anyway, the trans marshal. So again, well, I've looked this up. Why is the West lose? This worked for me the other day, although this is not on Google. Oh, it worked. Go you, Yahoo. Yeah, so yeah. See, the West additionally. So what am I even showing you, right? What the fuck is going on? So this is another paper I've come across in my time. So it's called China and Cognitive Warfare. Why is the West losing? Kimberly Orinks and Tanguy Stru de Suilanda. Sorry, I probably did that wrong. But anyway, as part of what they're talking about here, the peace war distinction is outdated and the West has not conformed and adapted to this new reality. I mean, I disagree that it's a new reality, that the peace war distinction doesn't apply. I think basically the problem is that the peace war distinction never applies, has never applied, really. Which I guess would again go back to the whole nominalism thing. So again, sorry, James Lindsay. I just always have him in my mind. It's like, I'm sorry that it has to be scary for you. But maybe he's also just trying to scare people. I don't know. Where are we going with it? I mean, we were starting off with transcommunism because I talked about it there and we're talking about it here. So everything's becoming politics. And basically the thing over here was, it's like you're making politics aesthetics. My point is politics can be aesthetics already. That's what Baudrillard's Transpolitics, and in his book, that's what I wanted to show you. Wasn't it there? Shit, I forgot what I was going to tell you about in his book. I already have one of these up, but I'm in love, but I'm lazy. At this point, do I remember which one I wanted? Oh, yeah, we want the transparency of evil. So so he has trans aesthetics. That's what I'm trying to show you. That's one of the things. Pure circulation of industry is trans aesthetics of banality. Banality of the image, trans aesthetics. So, I mean, it's one of the big three. There's trans politics, trans economics, and trans aesthetics. But, I mean, it ought to go for everything. So that's where I got transcommunism from. Because if communism is a politics, then transcommunism is a trans politics, right? I mean, it doesn't really make sense. So the impetus for this paper was to basically say, fuck what you heard when it comes to, the idea that Baudrillard is, either impractical or just pessimistic, right? Like this, or like this can't be put into practice. That's like the big problem, right? So I was trying to seize on something like that. So that's why transcommunism sounds like, well, okay, so if Marxism is not good enough anymore, or something like that, or if the Communist Party of France is not good enough anymore, I'm not saying that then there should be like a trans communist party, for example. But I thought I'd apply this concept of trans to politics to be able to just tease out the implications, because this prefix trans has a pretty settled idea, right? Because the idea is everything is X and nothing is X. And so the way that happens is that a given category, I personally believe it's not a historical, what's being impressed upon us is a philosophical feature of the world, but it didn't come into existence, for example, in the postmodern era. Like what we would call a postmodern era, or just where shit gets weird, because it's not just literary philosophers. I think Cold War paranoia also plays, and psychedelia, plays very much into this. And whether or not there had ever been even rock and roll or whatever, just these things happening was causing very big issues. And also very similar to what Baudrillard talks about in that, and also similar again to Roman Republic to Empire, is what I'm trying to say, where it's you keep the vestiges, right? You have the trappings, you have I guess you'd call it the superstructure, right? You have you maintain superstructural elements, but the guts are completely different. and it doesn't work that way anymore. And it's a question of like, well, who can really tell? And it's like, in a way, it's like things are so different, but who can even tell that it's different? And who even communicates well? Like, who even has enough institutional, like, who has good embeddedness, right? Like, who even has like access to a lot of people's memories as opposed to being more isolated with, look at what we're doing here. But so anyway, like if you just apply, I should get here pretty quickly, but basically the idea is, if you apply trans to communism, it's like, well, then everything's communism and nothing's communism. So what can that mean? So that's basically where this particular idea is going, and circling around, like what are some takeaways from Baudrillard's thought or whatever for practice. So this is something that I was thinking about in 2018. A little after my show started. I'm pretty thirsty, but we're gonna keep on trucking for now, I believe. What I actually want to do. Oh yeah, what I actually wanted to do was show you something here. I mean, this is just really good shit. Like, if you want to see where the metonymy idea, metonymy. Okay, possibility metaphor disappearing. So you can also, if you look into like Lakoff and Johnson, like what metaphor and metonymy are about is called. It's actually really great because it's called domains. I don't know if it's like discursive domains, something of that nature, to where like a metaphor is a mapping between two, or conceptual domains, right? A mapping between two conceptual domains. So if I say you're hot, and maybe what do I mean? I mean whatever, you're attractive, whatever. Like that's a metaphor because the conceptual domain of temperature is different than the conceptual domain of attractiveness or whatever. So then metonymy is when you're basically mapping within one conceptual domain. So I don't even really know what a good example of metonymy is anymore. Like a good classic example. You're naming something else. This is embarrassing. What's a good metonymy? Well, I mean, the point here is that, like, if you say you want to make a comparison between economics and politics, for example, so is that a metonymy or is that a metaphor? So, like, the classic example would be, like money is power. Like somebody, like if somebody has political capital, right? Is political capital a metaphor or is that a metonymy? Like, is political capital saying, like, as a metaphor that like you have money or you have the political equivalent of heavy machinery or something, or is it that politics, it has everything to do with that heavy machinery, or that the currency, social currency is another example where it's like, is that because currency can mean, like, people might not be aware of this because I feel like this is an antiquated or old usage of the word currency. I don't know exactly what it means. It's almost like favor. Like if you have currency with somebody, you have favor. It should have more, to be honest with you. Circulation is a medium of exchange. A medium of verbal or intellectual expression. So it's also words. Interesting. But for me, what it also maps on is to is it in this one? It's not in this one. There's another Baudrillard thing where he's talking about the 1,000 names of God. I think it might even be in the granddaddy of them all, obviously, Symbolic Exchange and Death. Oh. Well, there's this. The name of God. What I'm basically trying to say is that everything is the name of God. So this is the 9 billion names of God. So it's some people in Tibet. So there's some Buddhists. And they're like reciting the names of God. So then they get the computer to do it and the world ends. Because because the computer people, who built it for them, they didn't have any respect for this. But then the computer actually completed whatever, a cosmological project. And it was like, all right, well, basically some whack shit happened. But it also invokes this idea of the names of God. And anyway, it reminds me of metonymy, because if you think about it, like if there's one conceptual domain, I was talking about this before too, pantheism, so it's sort of like God withdraws, or panentheism. Because these people that I met, they like this. Entheism, like God within, although they do also put God in quotation marks, which is pretty good. Panentheism is also cool. Spinoza is also awesome, so that's also called pantheism. So notice like the same. So because the thing is, like, this is very subtle. Like, what is the distinction between the creator deity became the universe and ceased to exist as a separate entity, versus the divine intersects every part of the universe and also extends beyond space and time? Like, because if it says something like interfere with the universe, became the universe, right? God becomes the universe. Oh, interesting. This is a whole thing. This should be on an experimental unit, the subreddit. But anyway, God becomes the universe. Yeah, that's basically what we're repping. While I'm introducing you to this, might as well be introducing you to, well, yeah, some other things. But it might be worth going into transcommunism at this point, because like, what does it wind up, what's the work that it winds up doing, and then what does it have to do with experimental unit, is like sort of interesting, I guess. So we'll see what you think. So transcommunism. So again, let's just go through this, I guess. Okay, so September 6th, 2018. Well, I gotta get some water. 1 second. Wait, there's no water here, right? Is there still water here? All right. Let's see here. September 6th, 2018. Transcommunism and the Transpolitical Age. AI. 1. Transpolitics. He is a revolutionary who speaks of the world as non-separated. Okay, so my Moffrickin essay, I'm gonna like pull this out into a new thing. So the problem is my essay is not cited properly. So I am going to take the opportunity to once and for all just show you where the things are. So I think this should be able to work. So we need the mirror of production. Oh, it's not in this one. Yeah, see? Oh, he is truly. So yeah, this is just the classic. This is an ending passage of the radicality of utopia. Like this should just be read by itself. Okay. So like this is what I'm citing. So like this is where I'm starting, right? Isn't that what I'm saying? Yeah, this is my first line, right? Is referring to this. Which I just get excited about because I think this is fucking badass. Okay. In fact, Marx is right, objectively right. But this correctness and this objectivity were won, as in all science, only at the cost of a miscomprehension of the radical utopias contemporary with the Manifesto and Capital. In saying that Marx objectively theorized capitalist social relations, the class struggle, the movement of history, etc., one has claimed too much. In effect, Marx objectified the convulsion of social order, its current subversion, the speech of life and death, the liberator of the very movement, in a long-term dialectical revolution, in a spiraling finality that was only the endless screw of political economy. So if I were Varn would do a lot more commenting. So I got to comment on this. The radical utopias. So I guess talking about just like the novelty in social formation. So again, if you go back to the whole idea of what we're trying to talk about here, right? What is experimental unit? So in terms of like where I think it like things should go, like or whatever. Experimental unit. What is experimental unit? Experimental unit comes from the military. So it's a like new sort of experimentation with new military capabilities and force structures. But it can't just be a matter for simulations in laboratories or for the writings of theorists. Its success often depends on the establishment of experimental units that can test the emerging theoretical and technological capabilities to the fullest. Right. So that's basically our job. Right. So your mission, if you should choose to accept it, is that like, yeah, so you don't have to join with me. Right. So the whole point of experimental unit is that it's similar in this regard. It's similar to Imaginary Party. I mean, this is not a great essay, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't make any freaking sense. So, authors of the sphere of the imagination, the rhetoric of doing the traditional placement to mobilize the okay, so this is interesting. This is affects something like Varn says, like the idea of getting past left and right means that you're right wing. So you have to understand that, like in my brain, like in terms of me talking to you and my inhibition, like also this entire time, is that it's like people are going to think that like I'm a fascist or something. Like that's the problem. Like in the whatever, like anyway, I'm not gonna get into personal or like IRL shit, but it's just like, yo, like this is an issue. But at the same time, right, you also don't want to I mean, I wouldn't even say you don't want to be a fascist. I mean, that would be similar to being like, well, you don't want to go full communism, right? You don't want to go full tanky or something. It's like it's not, I don't think it's correct to be motivated by what you're trying to avoid, but follow like what makes sense to the necessary conclusion. And I definitely don't think I don't think it's proper to start off with this. I mean, I have an aversion. Like I enjoy situations where everybody is being respected, right? So if people want to be disrespectful, I don't know. I guess then I can come off sounding like liberal or something. I don't know. It doesn't fucking matter. The point is there's so much more to talk about. Like at this level, anyway. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like I can't sit here and like convince you that I'm not a fascist, right? Like that. It's funny. Reminds me of Stephen Colbert being like, I'm sitting here, I've been talking about how I'm not racist. That's like the whitest thing you can do. Anyway, Although they always propose their authoritarian ethno-state is the final solution, unlike these agents, authoritarian ethno-state. Okay, right. Like ethnicity, and I'm not into it. But so the problem with you, but you can't just like reject ethnicity or something. Like it's just a real fact that kind of stuff means things to people. And in terms of how we even understand history, we understand it as like things happening to groups of people, and like that shit affected us and things of that nature. So I mean, that's where I already presented this on another iteration of this exact same podcast or whatever. But so there's all religions are one, Sri Ramakrishna. So yeah, I mean, he's sitting here saying, he's practiced all the different religions and they're all the same. And William Blake's saying similar things. And then that's where I can like connect that with like political theology, which is also associated with Carl Schmitt, like, right? So it's like I'm sure, because I responded, or what the Walter Benjamin quote was, that nothing except war can mobilize people. So I'm like, religion. But I'm sure he's not going to be happy with that either, because, political theology is also associated with Carl Schmitt, who's Nazi, right? So there's a lot going on here. But I'm not here to say like, oh fuck that, like I can't believe I have to deal with this. I'm saying like buckle in, because this is something we're going to be talking about until literally the end of time. Okay, but like for now, we just have to get through the introduction of various concepts of how I think about things. So the point of what I'm trying to say is, yeah, I came up over here. So we're reading about the imaginary party. So we're reading about that because it's sort of, what was it? Is it related to this? I was like, yes, we're doing this, right? This is what we're doing, right? Like we are developing new capabilities and we are deploying them in the field. But then like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So like, I don't know, maybe somehow I'm able to communicate right now with people out there who are of good heart, who are somehow paying attention, and just we're letting each other know, or like, you don't have to let me know, right? Like I'm here to let you know that someone else is out here thinking about this stuff. And so practically speaking, you can be part of a distributed organization without ever having met or communicated with somebody else. So that is basically the stakes of my communication. So like that is what I want to do. Anyway, so then it's similar to the imaginary party, because the imaginary party is something that Tikkun, I guess it's more Tikkun than the Invisible Committee. But yeah, this is so great. Conscious organ of the imaginary party. It's fucking amazing. Being an organ is awesome. I mean, it's giving penis, right? But it could be giving a lot of things. It's giving I want to hold your gland, right? I don't know if you know about this. No. You have to give it to me exactly. Yeah, see? Reference to women's breasts. Classic. Anyway, so the idea behind the imaginary party is like we can be part of the same thing, but we don't know each other, right? We're just, I don't know if it says exactly. Ooh, Hegel, Virno, Bataille, Baudrillard, and Co. Yummy. Not an army, but a polarity of the imaginary party. This might seem like an eccentric rhetorical flourish. The concept of a polarity is key. It's a sphere with infinite points on its surface, okay? The front lines along which the friends and enemies of the dominant order are arranged have been poorly sketched out as continual and linear. This representation must now be replaced by an image of innumerable circular front lines, each of which has its space-time located within communities. Okay, so it's just like everybody's embedded within everybody else. That's just what it's saying. Like if you had a civil war where it was the North and the South, you can't do that anymore because everybody's like all mixed up with each other. Okay. All politics is left ruptured by pawn. No, the right. Okay. So in terms of left and right, we have more Baudrillard to look at. So I'm giving you more than your money's worth, but that's fine. So yeah, like I think he brings it up a couple times. Left is used 20 and right is used 11. Okay, cool. So he's talking about the left and right changing sides. The left has become a scold, so energy moves to the far right. Analysts are no longer found on the left or the far left only. Okay. But they have always been recycled by good and responsible. Okay, so yeah. We'll start right here, I guess. Let's give an example of such magical thought that today stands in for political thought. Le Pen. So that's I'm gonna look up Marine Le Pen, but that's just because I don't know what her dad's name is. So this is a lady who's in France. And oh, also this dude's name is Jean. Oh, frick. It's okay. So this dude was sort of like Donald Trump in the 90s. So anyway, Le Pen is blamed for the sentiment of rejection and exclusion of immigrants in France. Oh my God, immigrants sound familiar. But this is just a drop in an ocean of social exclusion that has overwhelmed all of society. This is just like when Queen was talking about the hammer to fall, like they were talking about Baudrillard coming and just fucking like setting it fucking straight. Like he's just this is just the thing where this is like the Ninth Symphony, where it's just like this is transcendent. My ears are melting. Like I'm so fucking happy. Like this is a drop in an ocean of social exclusion that has overwhelmed all of society. Laying the smack down. It's like I think about it in terms of like if you can see with your third eye, you know, because you could be looking at a freaking, you know, super nice. Oh my God, look at all the nice people with their houses and everybody's out. But if you could see like the emotional realm, it's just like desolation. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah. But anywho, so I don't claim to have just made an argument or anything. I'm just reacting. This is a reaction video. Okay. So ocean of social exclusion that has overwhelmed all of society. Also, ocean, invoking the ocean is awesome. So some of my core. Now you can see like how I'm never gonna finish like one thing, right? Like how are we gonna cascade back through all of these? Like not bloody likely, okay? This oh my goodness. So like ocean of social exclusion. So there's that. Then there's oceanic feeling. That's Freud. But actually somebody else I think used it in the letter to Freud. Yeah. A sensation of eternity, being one with the external world as a whole, right? Okay, so I mean this shit is fucking amazing. I guess I'm not gonna do the sound, but it's just like you watch the Titanic sink. Like it hits the iceberg, and then it's like it's just in the water, and it's just like slowly there's no people, you know? But it's just like holy shit. Can you freaking imagine? And it like goes all the way and everything. So that's the ocean. Oh, and then like I bring this up in a lot of podcasts, but it's something they say about the ocean and the Titanic that Oh, is it in the movie? It's that it feels like 1,000 knives stabbing you all over your body. That's pretty. Oh, okay. So, oh, guess I can't say. No, again, I'm not going to do that. But then it also reminds me of this. This is a painting called The Slave Ship by Turner. So you can see, like, people got thrown overboard here, right? Like, we see hands coming out of the ocean, right? So, like, this, like, enslaved people being thrown to the bottom of the ocean is also what this is giving me. And then we have, this is also, I'm playing this another time, but, you know, we got Sedna is also lives at the bottom of the ocean. Also, Glaucus is associated with the ocean. Also, Triton. I mean, we have an aspect of experimental unit lore is that we're going to have a party on Neptune in 2075. And actually, we're like where we're going to go is maybe this will come up. No. Yeah, so I mean there's this. Is this what I mean? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean Boyne Solcy. This is on Triton, right? So I mean Triton. Oh, I also need to show you Glaucus. But so there's Triton the moon, right? It's a really cool thing because it's rounded under its own gravity, has an atmosphere. It's in a retrograde orbit, right? Revolving in the opposite direction to the parent planet rotation, the only large moon in the solar system to do so, right? Triton is fucking doing its own thing, okay? But then in terms of mythology, Triton, I think, is a offspring of Neptune, son of Poseidon, and okay. So then, what else did I want to show? Oh yeah, what's like a story? What's the story with dude? Oh, there's also a lake god, god of the okay, a separate deity. Father was Poseidon. Another okay. The first then ruler of Libya. Okay, very cool. But then there's Glaucus, who's this one. And he ate a magical herb, and then he became, which would bring fish back to life. Made him immortal, also caused him to grow fins instead of arms and a fish's tail instead of legs, forcing him to dwell forever in the sea. Initially upset by this side effect, but Oceanus and Tethys perceived him well, and he was quickly accepted among the deities of the sea. Okay, good for you. Immortal but not immune to aging. Uh-oh. That's like interesting. But then let's see. I don't think there's another reference to Glaucus that I again have talked about in another one of these streams, but I don't think I have the thing here, because what you want is I'm forgetting already. So let's try and move backwards a little bit, shall we? Maybe we're in the wrong place. Yeah, so we have the slave ship. We talk about the oceanic feeling. We're reading through this, right? So the ocean, right? Dropped in the ocean of social exclusion. I don't know if there was something else I was waiting for while I was thinking about that. But recently, exclusion itself, as well as the social breakdown that politicians like to mention, were all excluded by the decree signed by the President of the Republic to dissolve the National Assembly. We are all both responsible and victim at the same time of this inextricable and complex process of exclusion. There is something typically magical in the need to conjure up this virus, which is everywhere to be found. It is a direct function of our social and technical progress, and in the desire to exercise the curse of exclusion, and our impotence by the same token, through the figure of a hated man, institution, or organization, no matter who or what they are. It is as if we were faced with the tumor in need of extraction, whereas, in fact, the metastases have already expanded everywhere. The Front National simply follows the course of the social metastases and is all the more virulent since people think that they have eradicated the disease when, in fact, it has already infected the entire body. Not to mention that this process of magical projection of the Front National takes place along the same lines as this party's own process of demonization of immigrants. One must always be suspicious of the ruse of contamination, a ruse by means of the transparency of evil, a ruse which, by means of the transparency of evil, mutate positivity into negativity, and a demand for liberty into democratic despotism. As usual, it is a question of reversibility, of a subtle encirclement of evil whose rational intelligence is never suspected. While modern pathology tells us a lot about the physical body, we do not pay attention to this mode of analysis when it comes to the social body. To remain within the political, we must step away from ideology and look at things through the lens of social physics. Our democratic society is a stasis. Le Pen is a metastasis. Global society is dying of inertia and immune deficiency. Le Pen is simply the visible transcription of such a viral condition. He is a spectacular projection of the virus. This happens in dreams, too. Le Pen is a... Okay, then that's interesting because we go all the way back here. I think it's... Oh, I'm supposed to be making new tabs. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Okay, so then I say, oh, dear, and I say, ODNI. So when I say ODNI, I'm thinking of Avril Haines. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, but I got there. We got there, folks. Let's see who we are. It better show the person, right? I mean... Don't you have to say their name? What is their name? See? Avril Haines. Frick yeah. She used to run a bookstore in... It wasn't an erotic bookstore, but it was this. Bookstore erotica readings. Fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. Fuck yes. Anyway, so if you want a Hegelian e-girl, let me suggest Avril Haines. Okay, let's see, when was Avril Haines born? August 27th. Oh my god, her birthday's coming up. Oh my god, or sorry, their birthday's coming up. Oh yeah, that's something I can be like. Everybody's agender. Everybody's agender. So I'm gonna call everybody they, and then. Also in this, we are all transsexuals, just as we are all biological mutants in potentia. We are all transsexuals symbolically. It's fucking awesome. We are all agnostics. We are all losing our defenses, potentially immunodeficient. We are all Machiavellians without knowing it. Representation is no more than a dialectical fiction concealing a duel to the death between the two parties involved, and then it mobilizes a will to power and a will to destroy the other, which may end up with the destruction of the self through voluntary servitude. All power is composed of the hegemony of the prince and the holocaust of the people. We are all a la Kalouf. Was it described? We gotta figure out who this is. Oh. Indigenous people who live in Chile and Patagonia? It is endangered as few native speakers survive? Okay, people took them to live in zoos. Oh, that must be what dude means. Yeah, that's a really weird thing. That's the kind of thing where it's like, sorry, you're gonna blame post-modernity and you had like people living in museums. Like, That's like some self-referential bullshit. Anyway, so I was trying to explain originally this part, although we still don't know. We're still not done over here. We have to get to where, oh, yeah. Okay, this is where we were. Le Pen is a burlesque, hallucinatory figuration of a latent state, of a silent inertia caused by forced integration and systematic exclusion. So, well, okay, let me just say, I don't know exactly what Baudrillard means, but I agree with what he's saying, and I'm going to fill in how I interpret this. So you have forced integration in the sense of like people are brought together. So think back to like Karl Marx or whatever, because he's like, capitalism is undoing itself because it's bringing everybody together. Okay, so in a way, this is true, but there is, and I guess Marxism would sort of say it accounts for this already, or something like this. But there's a corollary, which is this systematic exclusion. So what does that mean? So it's not just exclusion from the halls of power, say. It's the way people can be exclusive and we exclude each other, like at a lower level or whatever, which is, preventing this us coming together in physical space from resulting in us coming together, I don't know, in social intimacy or solidarity or whatever. And so then Baudrillard goes on to say, since the hope of finally curing social inequalities has truly disappeared by and large, it is no surprise if resentment has moved to the level of radical inequality. Of racial inequality. The failure of the social explains the success of the racial and of all the other fatal strategies. As such, Le Pen is the only savage. Okay, I gotta get going here soon. Is the only savage analyst in today's society. The fact that he is placed on the far right is merely the sad result of the fact that analysts are no longer to be found on the left or the far left. Judges, intellectuals no longer analyze. Only the immigrants, perhaps, as polar opposites, could become analysts too. But they already have been recycled by a good and responsible humanitarian thought. Le Pen is the only one who operates a radical erasure of the so-called distinction between right and left. This is, no doubt, an erasure by default, but the harsh criticism of this conventional distinction, which was unleashed in the 1960s and culminated in 1968, has unfortunately disappeared from the political scene today. Le Pen simply recuperates a de facto situation that the political class refuses to confront. It even uses elections to deny it, but whose extreme consequences will be felt one day. If one day political imagination, political will, and political demand hope to rebound, they will have to take into account the radical abolition of the antiquated and artificial distinction between right and left, which in fact has been largely damaged and compromised over the past decades, and which only holds today through some sort of complicit corruption on both sides. This distinction is dead in practice, but by means of an incurable revisionism is constantly reaffirmed. Thus, Le Pen is the only one who makes up the new political scene as if everyone else had already agreed to destroy what's left of democracy, perhaps to produce the retrospective illusion that it actually used to mean something. This is, again, the kind of thing where it's just like, this is just like Beethoven's 7th Symphony, 3rd movement, where it's just like, oh my god, it's fucking happening. Like, what the fuck is happening? It's just like, this is blowing my mind right now. And then it's like, I don't know. I want to show this to my cousins or whatever. Anyway, but nobody's here to tell me, like, Adam, this doesn't mean anything. Like, everybody wants to be so negative all the time. But anyway, like, Baudrillard's over here talking about, sucks to the right and the left. I feel like that had something to do with this. The left and right. Political identities created in the French National Assemblies. Right. So it's talking about here again, the right and left. The sphere of the imaginary party. Okay, so yeah. So in terms of talking about doing away with right and left, but here Baudrillard is doing it, right? That's the point of what I wanted to do. So again, maybe this also is important here. What consequences of this extreme but original situation can we envisage if we do not focus on the hallucinatory? If we do not focus on the hallucinatory medium that Le Pen embodies, if we do not take into account the point of magical conjuration where all energies converge and vanish. That's really funny because that's like we're talking about the absolute or the one or some shit. Anyway, how can we avoid falling for the viral growth of our own ghosts if we fail to take into account, beyond moral order and democratic revisionism, the type of savage analysis that Le Pen and Le Front National have to some extent taken from us? So this is awesome because like the crucial thing that like Baudrillard's arguing for at the end is called savage analysis, which is like the only savage analyst in today's society. He references the immigrants, but so this is, I mean, okay, again, like in terms of talking about like, people are going to think I'm on the far right. And then it's like, oh yeah, my favorite is Baudrillard. Like people think Baudrillard's conservative as well, right? So like, this is not helping me, right? I'm never going to beat the allegations, but that's fine. I don't fucking care. Like, yeah, so he's the only savage analyst. So it's a way of saying like Donald Trump is the only one doing like the new form of politics. And in a way that's true, in a way it's not true. Because now with Kamala Harris, like what is it? It's basically like we got used to Donald Trump. Like we can take it now. It has stretched us. We were distended, right? That's oh goodness. I'm trying to say, so in terms of what distends means, look it up on porn, right? Look up distension porn. I'll wait. But distend, means to expand, enlarge, or stretch out, right? To swell. So it's expanding your capacity. You're being overwhelmed because this is stretching you out. So reminds me of Percy Shelley, A Defense of Poetry. This is another one of my core texts. I read this in 2019 when I was graduating. So like that's where so like this is Transpolitics, but when it comes to the Metonymy Economy, there's a lot about Shelley in here, which is all about the defense of poetry. So I was reading that around that same time. But I guess I do want to be going through Transcommunism. I'm going to try and get through that. It's a complete joke. Okay. But so anyway, it's like Donald Trump is the only one doing politics. But that's not to say, like, go Donald Trump, right? Like, that's not the point. The point is, like, we need to, like, do something better than that, right? We got to get our game face on, which means, like, being a bit more, I think, sophisticated, not, like, less naive, less scandalized, appropriate everything. Like, yeah. I mean, that's where, we have absolute exploit. But so, experimental unit is basically, again, so we're doing this. We're doing, sort of clouded thing. You can have an informal organization. And then you can also have, this all religions are one. This was basically saying, like, from before, like, we're doing pansyncretism, right? So it's like all religions are one. So that's related, okay, again, to me not beating the right-wing allegations. This is like traditionalism. Oh no, the other one. And it's also like, So it's perennialism, but then there's also there's progressive revelation. I'm surprised this doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Oh, it does. So it doesn't just apply. Okay, there's Baha'i. Okay, great. Oh, okay, but it gets that from Christianity. Very interesting. Oh, goodness gracious. So, I mean, I don't know if Baha'i is also supposed to be coded right wing, but like Julius Evola is supposedly having to do with the perennial philosophy. But it's just like this is just a place we have to go. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think this is just like correct. I think everything is part of, itself or whatever. And so ultimately, like condemning another part of creation or another part of the world is fruitless. Like what is the difference of being like, well, I'm against that or something like that? I mean, it has to do with the choices that we make, but in terms of we can also appreciate that we are created by uh destructive choices, not even the ones that we made, but like we are the products of people who were in struggles. And so basically we shouldn't judge. It's like judge not lest ye be judged. And that's from Matthew, and Percy Shelley, I think, even quotes it. Um, and of course, in a way, we can't help judging each other, whatever. But in terms of like our coolness, when we're doing our philosophy, right? And it's like, oh well, some people, because the other thing is, right? It's like all religions are one. So first of all, some people don't like religion. It's like whatever, screw you. It's the problem's not that there are religions; it's that there's exclusivism. I wonder if this is, yeah. So like religious exclusivism, like this is a big problem. I don't like this. I mean, a religious pluralism. I don't know if I would do pluralism or perennialism. Anyway, but so then you apply that to political theology, and you also apply personal identity, or rather like incarnation, like Dasein, like continuity of Dasein. So what you're basically saying is that the individual, instead of the religion being a way for an individual to believe in God, instead an individual is the religion of God, because to the extent that I believe that I am myself, I am the absolute, and I have adopted Adam Stephen Wadley as a religion. So in this way, the personal identity and like my convictions about myself, we can bleed these into political theology in terms of convictions about politics, as well as religion proper. So when we go back over here to say all religions are one, and where this has everything to do with what Baudrillard is basically talking about when he's talking about implosion, when he's talking about these conceptual domains imploding together. And I don't know, it's like a thing, but there's a certain kind of power that comes from being able to adapt to this way of thinking. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but certainly I encounter a lot of friction whenever I talk to anybody about anything. So I'm trying to just put like my ideas out there. You can engage with them at your own leisure, and then you can see whether you find that compelling. Oh yeah, I was trying to beat the rightist shit before by saying, like, I don't believe in ethnic based. Like, I'm not motivated by, like, I need to help my ethnicity or something. But on the one hand, there are people out there who are motivated by this like ethnic type, and even like really existing organizations, right? Regardless of whether or not ethnicity really means anything. I mean, there's just a lot of things. I mean, it's a funny thing because like white supremacists use the human biodiversity movement or something. But on the other hand, like there are kinds of people that are going extinct. It's like, uh, where this is coming in, pansyncretism, right? Is like what you want like a pan nationalism. Like it's not that I'm against. It's not that it's so fucking horrible that people like gravitate around a shared identity, but the idea that you're gonna make only the people who share that identity collectively your priority, that is extremely pernicious and cannot be allowed. So anyway, I think these people agree. So unlike these agents of domination, the imaginary party expects nothing from a present society and its evolution because it is already its very dissolution and that which lies beyond. It guarantees that it itself will never become a power. I mean, this is just like blah. Like, this is like, you can't fucking say this kind of shit ahead of time. This is like stupid. The thing is, my position would be that there is no the status quo. I don't agree with the friend-enemy distinction, basically because I think everything, it's sort of like everything is becoming, but it's not even really like that because it's not temporal. It's also along the lines of the dreaming. We're going to have to come back to the imaginary party, I think. The dreaming, in the sense that it's like, it's not that things are changing so fast, like in terms of like why words don't work, like why we're doing nominalism, right? Like, we're doing nominalism, it's basically overdetermined, right? In the sense that there's multiple reasons. One reason is like things are changing so fast that to put a label on something is misleading, and like to get too invested in the rigidity of your label is going to be misleading because things are always changing so quickly. There's even meta problems here because it's not even like we're talking about the state, right? But the actual nature of a given state, much less every single state in the world that there is reputed to be, they're all changing so fast so that when we talk about the state, we don't know what we're talking about because it's changed since the last time we learned what it really means. But on the other hand, there's also the issue that the way we use a word also reflects the way other people use the word. So that's an issue because people might be using a word in ways that we don't understand. So like, I mean, it's funny. I think of Ich bin ein Berliner, but it's like, I mean, that's just a sort of mistake anyway. But anyway, so on the one hand, things are changing so fast that, you know, you can't step in the same river twice is basically the problem, right? Because you can't use the same word twice. I already said that, right? But then the other problem is it's not that time's moving too fast. It's basically that time is not passing. It's like, it's not that things have one state and they have another state and you can't grasp it. It's like they never have one state at all. Anyway. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get through, this. A miscomprehension of the radical utopias contemporary with the manifesto in Capital. So I got off on a tangent because the radical utopias basically means like people are doing radical experimentation, right? Which is in a way what we need. We need like radical experimentation because this can then have, sorry, I keep rubbing my nose or whatever, but it's like this can then have unknown consequences. It's basically like cultural revolution, right? I guess I should like know more about this. I know about it a little bit. I mean, it's obviously a loaded context problem, but you know, as Baudrillard says, it's not revolution, it's implosion, it's involution. Like the revolution conjures an idea. Like my idea, I think I even. Is it possible? Did I put it up? I don't think I put it up. No. What am I trying to look for? Yeah. I already forgot. Radical Utopias, then this. Experimental unit. Forgot what I was talking about. Oh, full spectrum revolution. Oh yeah, I was just talking about the idea of revolution. So Baudrillard goes off on like implosion, for example, or involution, which is again, so my idea of full spectrum revolution is a response to that because it's basically saying, are you having a revolution from above? Or are you having a revolution from below, right? And the question is, you're having both. Oh, I guess there's only one from above. But anyway, you know, or like you can have a revolution from the middle and from the outside, you know? And it's like, or like, who's the subject of history? You know, people talk about this shit all the time. Oops. I think this is a term. Oh my god, yeah. Well, basically something like this. Is this going to let me see anything? Probably not. Historical subjectivity, historical silence. Like, who's going to be the one who has to do the important thing? And it's basically like everybody, and that corresponds to the idea that the Holy Spirit is coming together back through all of us, right? So that's where this is also building into, obviously, like religious. So it's like we're going to include everybody. So that's funny because we were just looking at a documentary about Fred Hampton today, and so it's the Rainbow Coalition. Hello, I even I even got into this like 10 years ago. I'm just like continually. It's like I already knew what it was. Anyway, we'll try and do Transpolitics. Okay. Oh no, wait, we have to finish this. Yeah. Okay. Contemporary with the Manifesto and Capital. So he's saying basically there's other people around at the same time that are doing cooler shit. So he's saying, in saying that Marx objectively theorized capitalist social relations, the class struggle, the mood of history, etc., claimed too much. Marx objectified the convulsion of a social order, its current subversion, the speech of life and death, the liberator of the very movement, in a long-term dialectical revolution, in a spiraling finality that was only the endless screw of political economy. So, like, Marx is trying to capture everything in this like boring fucking language, which is not like this speech of life and death. Like the people who are really out there connecting, like doing really liminal shit, like really like subverting shit, whatever. There's basically more radical cultural forms of expression. He's not using culture here, but like, yeah, convulsion of a social order, right? So similar to like Afro-pessimism, right? Where Afro-pessimism is talking about like we need to have a form of disorder, which is basically like, you don't want to get too like, don't get scared, right? It's sort of like creative destruction, right? Or deterritorialization, if you want to get Deleuzian about it. But it's like, it's sort of like things are becoming unmoored because they're going to have to be grown together at a higher order. And that's just like happening. There's no getting around that, right? We're going to have to rebuild. Anyway, convulsion of a social order, its current subversion, the speech of life and death. I already said that. Okay. The cursed poet, non-official art, and utopian writings in general, by giving a current and immediate content to man's liberation, should be the very speech of communism, its direct prophecy. Okay, first of all, man's, we should read this as a gender man. You can always think of Adam Cadmon. That's what I always think of. That's why I don't change my name. But we have, utopian writings in general, right? Non-official art. Like, these should be the very speech of communism. This is great. Like, and this also goes back to Percy Shelley. Also, what's his name? Oh, dear. Utopian scheme. For the more general terms, isocracy. Okay, I like that as well. Okay, utopian scheme devised in 1794, Samuel Coleridge, right? Before he became conservative. But anyway, so this is obviously before Karl Marx was born. So it's like there's tendencies toward egalitarianism, what you might want to call communism, that predate Karl Marx, right? They go back not just to religion, but to poetry. And so then obviously you're going to have people who are like, yeah, but there's like, that can go to the right. And it's just like, well, yes, but like, that doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is what's powerful. So we have to talk about the shit. And then like, in terms of not being bad, in terms of right wing and everything, that's where you have a hard anti-scapegoating line. But then you're not going to like that sometimes because it's going to sometimes apply to people that you want to be enemies, right? Sorry. And then I forget what else. They are only its bad conscience precisely because in them something of man is immediately realized, because they object without pity to the political dimension of the revolution, which is merely the dimension of its final postponement. Right. So this whole thing of like, we need to like work a lot because we need to like, win an election, and like, it's like all this shit is going to happen in the future, right? And we're not going to live differently now. We're not going to have, new fucking levels of emotional intimacy now. Like we can do this now, right? In terms of like what poetry is, right? Poetry is just fucking talking, right? So like we could be talking better. Like I often think about it in terms of dirty talk. So anyway, cover your ears if you don't want to hear that. But it's like how can you think to use words, right? And how does that help mold a situation? It's sort of like Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Anyway, dirty talk is one application of that. But yeah, it's this postponement. Albert Camus actually references something similar in The Rebel, where he's talking about how Lenin, the way that the Soviet shit worked out was basically about, we're constantly postponing when, the good time is going to come. It's like, it's going to be great for workers as soon as, we basically don't have any enemies anywhere, as soon as we are safe. But see, that's the same story that everybody's telling, right? That's the exact same story where every government or every military industrial complex is basically telling itself, we need to enslave ourselves. Basically, we're going to enslave ourselves and everybody that we can until we can defeat everybody else to make sure that they can't enslave us. And then we can all be free. But the problem is we can't decisively defeat each other, especially since we've now created nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. And now everything's so uncertain that achieving this sort of final victory does not really seem tenable, at least I would say as long as the population is greater than one. And then once the population is one, then, there's the possibility of suicide. So like, that's where my mind is going, in terms of like the sustainability of sociality, not because of, that's a funny thing. Like, so it's the problem. That's actually really funny. It's the issue is not a scarcity of like resources in the world, but it's a scarcity in a way of conceptual resources. Like we can't. It's a failure of imagination. That is fundamentally what is missing. Is a failure of imagination, more so than it is the fact that something is missing or that I don't have money or something like that. Anyway. They are the equivalent at the level of discourse of the savage social movements. Okay, funny, because this is Baudrillard using the word savage like way long before. Anyway, they're the equivalent at the level of discourse of the savage social movements that were born in a symbolic situation of rupture. Symbolic, which means non-universalized, non-dialectical, non-rationalized in the mirror of an imaginary objective history. See, this is where people say dude can't be clear. So he's saying symbolic, right? Okay. This is why poetry, not art, was fundamentally connected only with the utopian socialist movements, with revolutionary romanticism, and never with Marxism as such. It is because the content of liberated man is at bottom of less importance than the abolition of the separation of the present and the future. This is another place where it's just like, my man Jean Baudrillard has like the freaking like Infinity Stones, like. And this is where people are going to be like, watch another movie. And it's just like, I don't fucking care, okay? Because it's so fucking cool that you can just, take your chagrin and, stuff your sorries in a sack, mister. Because, the freaking stone is just like clinking into place. And my homie, Jean Baudrillard, is just like, raw! And it's just like, we're going to abolish the separation of the past and the future. Like, do you understand? Like, not even we're going to. It's like, you can do that. We're doing this right now. Like, we can just do this. And it's funny because this is in a way, like, this is moksha, right? This is moksha. This is freaking, I guess it's something like gnosis. But this goes back to Dreamtime. Like, this is hardcore, the dreaming. Like, we're abolishing the present and the future. Which is like, you must be abolishing the separation of the present and the past. And, Anyway, but so the reason why you're doing present and the future is that, like, we're not fucking postponing, right? We're not waiting for anything. Okay? DJ waits on no man. Okay? That's a Full House reference. And I haven't seen it in a long time, but I just remember it because DJ was waiting on a call. And then, like, Michelle picked up the phone Stephanie did, because DJ had been consoling herself. She'd been doing sour grapes because it seemed like the person wasn't going to call, but then the person called. Anyway, it was all very dramatic. But yeah, this shit where it's like the content of liberated man. Okay, yes, exactly. The content of liberated man. It's like liberated man, like oh my fucking god. And then it's like, is it bottom of less importance? Thank you. It's like the thing where it's um Mitch Hedberg, where he's talking about like don't disturb, and it's like do not disturb. It's like do. It's like oh great, I get to disturb this guy. Not oh shit. It's like I'm reading this. I'm like, uh-oh, he's going to talk about liberate. What are you trying to say about liberated man? That sounds horrible. But then he says, of less importance than the abolition of the separation of the present and the future. Like, that is some fucking cold ass shit to say before you pop a cap in somebody's ass. Do you understand what I'm telling you? The abolition of this form of time. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The commodity form. What about the fucking temporal form, right? Nobody ever talks about the goddamn form of time. And it bothers me, right? It's you're breaking my heart, right? I treat you like anyway. The abolition of this form of time, the dimension of sublimation, makes it impossible to pardon the idealists of the dialectic, who are at the same time the realists of politics. Boom! For them, the revolution must be distilled in history. It must come on time. It must ripen in the sun of the contradictions. That it could be there immediately is unthinkable and insufferable. Poetry and the utopian revolt have this radical presentness in common, this denegation of finalities. It is this actualization of desire no longer relegated to a future liberation, but demanded here, immediately, even in its death throes, in the extreme situation of life and death, such as happiness, such as revolution. It has nothing to do with the political ledger book of the revolution capitalized. Contrary to Marxist analysis, which posits man as dispossessed, as alienated, and relates him to a total man, a total other who is reason and who is for the future, which is utopian, but in the bad sense of the term, which assigns to man a project of totalization. Utopia, for its part, would have nothing to do with the concept of alienation. It regards every man and every society as already totally there, at each social moment in its symbolic exigency. Symbolic exigency. That's a fucking good one. Marxism never analyzes the revolt, or even the movement of society except as an intricate ornament of the revolution, as a reality on the way toward maturation. This is a racism of perfection. Oh my god. This is like this fucking sentence is like a school shooting. Like, this is just like, fuck you. Like, this is like Melania Trump wearing that shit where she's like, I don't really care, do you? Like, I'm just trying to say in terms of like heartless, like cold, badass. Like, those things are not really badass. I don't know. I'm embarrassing myself again. But I'm just trying to say this fucking shit is awesome. This is a racism of perfection. Because it's like, this is just a way nobody would use the word racism this way, right? Like, no, I don't know. This is a racism of perfection, of the finished stage of reason. It throws everything else into a nothingness of things transcended. Marxism is still profoundly a philosophy, even at its scientific stage, though all that remains in it of a vision, through all that remains in it of a vision of alienation. In terms of alienation, the other side of critical thought is always a total essence that haunts a divided existence. But this metaphysics of the totality is not at all opposed to the present reality of the division. It is complementary to it. For the subject, the prospect of recovering his transparence or his total use value at the end of history is just as religious a vision as the reintegration of essences. Alienation remains the imaginary of the subject, even of the subject of history. The subject will not become again a total man. He will not rediscover himself. Today he has lost himself. The totalization of the subject is still the end of the political economy of consciousness, confirmed by the identity of the subject, just as political economy is confirmed by the principle of equivalence. Instead of deluding men with a phantasm of their lost identity, of their future autonomy, this notion itself must be abolished. So yeah, what is this notion? The principle of equivalence. Imagine a subject, even though the subject of history. No. Yeah. I mean, it's just this sort of idea of like there's a clear thing where it's like, we lost our freedom, we're gonna get our freedom back. Also, gotta say, like, yes, they're like this should all this I don't know, the gender politics of this are whack, but whatever. So then, what an absurdity it is to pretend that men are other, to try to convince them that in their deepest desire is to become themselves again. Okay, so this is interesting because it's sort of like theodicy. Like Baudrillard's basically saying, like, we're all exactly where we're supposed to be. There's not some other version of us that we are thwarted out of, right? Like, we are just where we are. And like the same system that we might say is cutting us off from certain things has also given us everything that we have. So like there is really he also expresses this in the sense of like, you have a something and you must use it. It's like it's the same thing as where it's like, hey, like how you feel bad about yourself, and it's like, no, I don't feel bad about myself, and it's like, oh, okay, great, because that's why I have Jesus, because you feel so bad about yourself. And then it's like, now I'm going to come and make you feel bad about yourself until you need Jesus. And then I'm going to come with Jesus, right? So it's sort of like problem, action, solution, LOL. So anyway, this is basically a way of saying that it's this like problemification where it's like, uh-oh, you don't have your real identity, man, or whatever. So it's fooling you into thinking that you have this real identity. You need to figure out what it is. So instead, it's easier to just be like, no, bye-bye. And so the cost of that or whatever is that you don't get to say that other things should be something else as well. So it requires radical acceptance, which basically requires accepting radical negativity. So this, to finally circle back around to like Nazism and, hardcore right-wing shit and everything, like I think the reverse paradox of tolerance or something like that is like within panentheism, within the system that includes everyone, you have to include like you have to include hateful elements, basically, and things that don't seem to get along with other things. And you need to learn how to treat of them, not to like let them, I don't know, stay the same as they are right now, not to let anybody come to harm. Like it's like people should not be indulged to that. I mean, you can't stop that, right? People are coming to harm all the time. But basically, the emergency response, which can start, making it so that people stop coming to harm. Shit. What was it about that? Oh, I mean, it's basically falling into these parameters. So again, it's to say like we're not alienated in the sense of like there's not another version of me that I'm supposed to be. Like I am just myself. You know what I mean? Like, and then if you look at this in terms of the dream time, or if you look at this in terms of a Zen cone or something, it's very similar. Like there's a Zen cone or whatever that says like in this moment what is lacking. So the idea is nothing's really lacking. It's like compared to what? Like where did you get the expectation that things are supposed to be different? But this is sort of part of theodicy. Like this is related to the idea of like, is God the author of sin and things like this? Or like, can we be divine? And it's like, no, we can't be divine because we're so imperfect. And it's like, well, how do we judge perfection? And why do we think that the divine needs to be perfect? So on and so forth. It also circles, I don't know if I got into Leela this time, but it's basically like the way I think about it in terms of just like talking about suffering is that, there's the divine and the absolute, the substrate, like I mean, it's the basic thing, where it's like the true deity is like, I am. And there's this like subtle substrate, which is below all being or whatever. So it's like, that really can't be hurt by any of the suffering that we go through in this life. So in a way, it's sort of like a game because it's like in Groundhog Day where he can't die. And so he like does all this crazy shit. It's sort of like how it is to be God, where it's like, you might as well do all this crazy, stupid stuff because like it's almost like you want to experience everything, but you're God, right? So it's not just like you, you experiment with the gross tasting jelly beans, right? Like that's not the limit of, God's experimentation, right? It's sort of like peekaboo, I think about it, or Fuat Da, That's how Sigmund Freud talked about it. Just because it's like, it's a play in contrast. Like when I'm in the bath, I'll run it hot water and then I'll run cold water. And it's just like, that's all I'm doing. I'm like doing this weird self-soothing, which is very wasteful. But it's basically just this alternation. Variety is the spice of life. I think John Donne, I don't know if he said it like that, but it's something like that, you know. Okay, each man is totally there at each instant. Society also is totally there at each instance. Corduroy, the Luddites, Rimbaud, the Communards, the people of the Savage Strikes, those of May 68. Savage again. In any case, the revolution does not speak indirectly. They are the revolution, not concepts in transit. Their speech is symbolic and it does not aim at an essence. In these instances, there is a speech before history, before politics, before truth, speech before the separation and the future totality. He is a revolutionary. He speaks of the world as non-separated, which is, again, to get back to this, that's my first line. Oh my God, it's so amazing. I love it so much. Okay, there is no possible or impossible. The utopia is here in all the energies that are raised against political economy. But this utopian violence does not accumulate. It is lost. It does not try to accumulate itself as does economic value in order to abolish death. It does not grasp for power. To enclose the exploited within the single historical possibility of taking power has been the worst aversion the revolution has ever taken. One sees here to what depths the axioms of political economy have undermined, pervaded, and distorted the revolutionary perspective. Utopia wants speech against power and against the reality principle, which is only the phantasm of the system and its indefinite reproduction. It wants only the spoken word, and it wants to lose itself in it. Like, I don't even really know what to say about this stuff. I just want to say, like, this writing is just intoxicating to me. Like, this shit is fucking amazing. Like, this is just like fucking Jim Morrison in that song where he's like, we want the world and we want it now. And it's like, you don't want to see the world after we're done with it. Okay. Like, holy shit. Anyway. So that's where I start. So then he introduced the world trend. Okay. So everything's political. Power is replicated in every field. So the political became coterminous with the aesthetic, the economic, the sexual, etc. We are immediately confronted with the failure of concepts to cut the world at its joints. That's like what, Wittgenstein or something? Plato. Yeah. So it basically means like there's really different parts and holes in society, and you're going to discover the actual like lay of the land, and you're going to actually like this tree, that tree, different species. Like the thing is, anytime you zoom in, shit's like a fractal. You can't define species. You can't define life. You can't define a color. You can't define anything. You can't define any words. You can't prove anything. Like once you really get open, because lots of us, we put up this defense where it's like, well, of course, like, and this has everything to do with what people call like relativism. But relativism is really not what I'm saying. I'm not saying everybody's equally correct. That's not the point at all. The point is, in a way, things are a bit unmoored. But like when it comes to like where we're going with this, like I don't know how to respond to that whole thing right now. But I basically think it's bullshit. I think it's like the kind of thing. I think people get into the kind of stuff that I talk about pretty often, but like they do it wrong. I think especially when most people like remain political in the sense of like we have enemies, like there's bad people. So like that's where I really distinguish myself. But I mean, that's also where, again, with the left-right stuff, like that's the kind of thing that cuts me off from the left. And people would then be alienated because, I don't choose the same enemies that you do. And I guess, like, in a way, like the imperial, like the overlord, the world controller, right? You don't have to have enemies. It's just people die because of what you do. It's not that you don't like them. It's just business. But, like, that's not a good excuse, right? So I can see that. But at the same time, like, I fundamentally don't believe that doing a struggle or contesting, like, what's going on with shoddy concepts is going to be adequate. So for example, with, like, what's going on with Palestine, right? Like, I would embrace, like, violence is already happening, right? That's not the question. The question is not, do I want violence to happen? The question is, how can we get these bombs to stop? How can we get these people to stop doing this to each other, right? So, like, in the immediate term, right, there's issues. So, like, if people were going to, like, sabotage or, infiltrate or do influence operations from the inside, which would be, like, subversive in some sense, like, I would favor that, right? And so, like, that would be something people would consider to be a threat or something. So it's like, right? Like, I'm the, but on the other hand, like, I'm still not anybody's enemy. Like, I think that kind of thing would be for the good of everybody involved. Like, it's not that there's some people that I think need to be harmed. It's like they seem to be unaware or, like, confused about their interests. Confused about their interests. This gets into will. I don't know if I brought up before the nature of war. So this that war is a contest of wills is something which people have gone over. But so, can we cut the world at its joints in the sense of, like, can we delineate between two different people's wills? That's where I think then the question gets interesting, because even if you are going to do a contest of wills, you're still saying some people are acting in concert, right, at the level of the national army, at least at the level of intelligence cadre or whatever, right? There's some people who are working together. But, like, how exactly are you defining that in the sense of that they all have different wills, but they're all lined up in terms of what they mean? Like, we gloss over that because if you're in the middle of a conflict, I mean, it's two things, right? Like, you don't want to question cohesion when you need to fight the enemy, but also it's well known that, the idea of having an enemy is actually being used to cover over divisions within the domestic population. So it's like you can be taken advantage of because somebody else is telling you that you need to follow their leadership to defeat an outside enemy, but they're really, like, playing up the idea of an outside enemy to get you to follow their leadership, right? But then, like, who are they, right? Like, this people who run society, right? So when we're cutting the world at its joints, right, who's in charge, right? C. Derek Varn talks about, like, where's the bourgeoisie? We can't tell. Anyway, given that in effect there are no joints or natural kinds of distinction, Baudrillard confronts this quandary at the beginning of Symbolic Exchange and Death. Strictly speaking, nothing remains for us to base anything on. All that remains for us is theoretical violence, speculation to the death, whose only method is the radicalization of hypotheses. Even the code and the symbolic remain terms of simulation. It must be possible to extract them one by one from discourse. So then I go on to say, Baudrillard's undermining of his own core concepts reminds one of Wittgenstein's dictum that we should remain silent about those things that we cannot speak of. It is simply for Baudrillard, it is impossible to speak meaningfully about anything. Okay. Meaningfully about anything. Okay. This is actually more similar to where Wittgenstein says that we need to, like, burn the book after we finish reading it. Or, like, pull up the ladder after us or something like this. So it's like we get to where we get the idea of the words, but then we need to immediately, like, erase the words. It's like we're erasing our tracks in the snow. But anyway, I chose a different thing. Anyway, impossible to speak meaningfully about anything in the perfect. So in the sense of meaningfully, what I mean is, like, what Baudrillard's saying. This is what I'm going to make an article about this called conceptual churn. So Baudrillard is saying that he wants to remove his own favorite words from discourse, seduction the code and symbolic, right? It's like remain terms of simulation. Even simulation remains a term of simulation. It must be possible to extract them because we're going to go higher and higher into different levels. Yeah, there's just so much here. I don't want to go through all this. I'm going to take you to one more thing from Baudrillard, and then I'm going to fucking stop this. And we'll just have to pick up again. But I really do have to stop doing this over and over again because I'm literally going to start forgetting what I've even said at all and what I haven't. But there was one part. Oh, I remember. It's not like on page 88 or something. I always notice when things are on page 88. I mean, I have a bad conscience, right? I definitely have a bad conscience, but, you know. Oh, but I should be able to. Also, this is where a conjuration of imbeciles is. Oh my god, it's so fucking awesome. So I think it's toward the vanishing point of art. So that's 98. Oh, also dust breeding? That sounds fucking demented. That sounds awesome. Like, this is why Baudrillard's amazing. Look at this fucking, I mean, implosion. Good, anyway. But, radical thought is also a crazy good one. Oh, war porn is also in this? Crazy. Oh, The Matrix Revisited. Did I read that? Probably. Anyway, towards the vanishing point of art, 98. I think this is it. Yeah. Oh, it's actually, it's like right here. Okay, so where this is going is because I was just talking about conceptual churn, because Baudrillard is saying here that, and I'm going to go back in time and say, like, just in the future, you just got to skip through my video to, like, if I stop talking, you just got to jump to where I start talking, because I'm not going to edit this shit. So he's talking about conceptual churn, like he's churning through everything. So it's like you never stay on one set of terms. You need to be constantly going through new. So you need to be constantly iterating in terms of simulation. So in terms of simulation, is simulation good or bad? That's where this was also going in terms of a defense of poetry. Well, there was the distends. The point of poetry distends. So the idea there was Donald Trump is like exploding the political scene. So we need to go in there and fill it up, right? And now we have what I was basically saying was, you know, the meme magic and everything can be deployed for Kamala Harris. It's all in a bottle at this point. But we need to keep forging ahead, right? And like doing like amazing new like art basically, and like it's not the aestheticization of I'm sure there's also the politicization of art, which is supposedly fine, and people think this is like a huge like awesome distinction, but I think it's stupid anyway. I'm wrapping this up. So what I'm trying to say is here, this is what he's saying. So he's saying, in some, to use Benjamin's expression again, there's an aura of simulation just as there's an aura of authenticity of the original. If I dared, I would say there is an authentic simulation and inauthentic simulation. This wording may seem paradoxical, but it is true. There is a true simulation and a false simulation. When Warhol painted his Campbell's soups in the 60s, it was a coup for simulation and for all modern art. In one stroke, the commodity object, the commodity sign, were ironically made sacred. The only ritual we still have, the ritual of transparency. This is the kind of shit where it's like, this right here is like the end of a sentence. It's sort of like a throwaway part of music where it's like just at one phrase or measure, one iteration through the song. It's just like a little ornament of the music, but it's fucking amazing. And it's like there's a band where it's like the little ornaments that they put in their songs are better than a lot of other people's entire songs. And that's what Baudrillard is, because he's just like the only ritual we still have, the ritual of transparency. This is just like somebody is just like making banter with you at like a fucking dinner party, and they turn around and just fucking slit somebody's throat and turn around and just like don't even break their fucking like stride in terms of what they're saying. You know what I mean? And it's just like, holy fucking shit. You are fucking crazy. This is just like eviscerating. Anyway, this is like sacred cow blood, like going up in smoke. Anyway, when he painted his soup boxes in 86, he was no longer illuminating. He was in the stereotype of simulation. In 65, he attacked the concept of originality in an original way. In 68, he reproduced the unoriginal in an unoriginal way. In 65, he dealt with the whole trauma of the eruption of commodity and art in both an aesthetic and ironic way. The aestheticism of the economy, its puritanical and fantastical side, enigmatic, as Marx wrote. and simplified artistic practice by the same token. The genius of commodity, the evil genius of commodity, produced a new virtuosity in art, the genius of simulation. Nothing was left in 86, only the publicizing genius that illustrated a new phase of commodity. Once again, it was the officially aestheticized commodity falling back into the sentimental aestheticization Baudrillard condemned. You might reply, the irony is even greater when you do the same thing after 20 years. Anyway, it's funny because if you read this in conjunction with this, like this is basically saying we're never gone. So by that, you could say, no, there's not a good and bad simulation because all simulation is just the simulation that it has to be at a given time, which loops us back around to progressive revelation. Because like, again, simulation is this like dancing with appearances. And so it's basically just like saying, well, things appear the way that they need to appear at a given time. But like, just to say that it's okay, like the way things are given to us at the moment, it's not endorsing the status quo because you are basically holding open. You're being a radical skeptic, right? You're being a nominalist. You're being a whatever, where it's like the status quo is itself revolutionary. It can't stay. It's not one thing. It can't. It's not defined, and it's not maintaining itself. Like that's a delusion, and like the delusion of that might like be consistently in people's minds, but there's still variable means by which that delusion or whatever, to the extent that it is even the same delusion, right? To the extent that that appearance of continuity is maintained, right? But so what is interesting is to explain the semblance of continuity, not to like the idea of radical politics is often like, well, how can we change anything, right? How can we possibly make any difference? And that's basically a way of saying that things are a certain way and we can't change them. And so instead of saying they're not a certain way. But anyway, this is I was building off of this because Baudrillard's doing conceptual churn, right? That I want to build up which is also, it's a form because another thing with trans, I want to build the concept of trans conceptualism, because this is a way of basically saying like, well, am I caught in conceptual thought or not? Or is poetic thought maybe non-conceptual or figurative? No, I mean, figurative is what it is. It's figurative language. It's non-representational, right? But so if it's non-representational, then it's still conceptual in a way. Anyway, the point is, if it's trans-conceptual, then it's conceptual and not conceptual at the same time. And that's basically the idea. It's like you're moving orthogonal to all these things. And it's like, the point is not like I'm saying I'm above it and you're catching me and saying, oh no, you are really in it. It's like, no, my whole thing is that nothing is really in it. And so like, if I seem to be in it, like I'm also not in it. And so like, if I'm contradictory, then you're contradictory. And if I make sense, then you make sense. But in this like weird way. Anyway, I think I need to stop because I'm very tired. But I hope you have enjoyed this initial primer into experimental unit. Okay. Where does all that leave us in terms of transcommunism? Maybe I should wrap this into experimental unit. I mean, it has everything to do with like experimenting with language, for example, right? And like not getting stuck in certain terms. So for example, like I have zero patience really. I mean, I have patience, right? Like I go to all these radical events and I listen to people talk, but like I don't care about like anti-capitalism. Like I just don't care about that because for me, capitalism is this like overdetermined word that doesn't mean anything. And like people think they know what they're talking about, but they don't. And so like I don't care, right? So in terms of experimental unit, like one of my interventions, right, would be like, that's not how we're thinking about things anymore. And similarly with nation states, like I don't care. I mean, the question of whether or not I care about something, like that's just a mode of expression for me. But what I'm trying to say is that, in terms of experimental unit, it has everything to do with conceptual churn. Because what it has to do with is thinking about things in a new way and thinking about things through different terms and like ripping away like the way people normally think about things and trying to build up basically cadres, but like build up communities where you can like decisively move past these things. Because as much as people can say like, oh, our imaginary, we can't move past material conditions. It's like you can do a lot of fucking shit if you can get your like ideas on like a different plane or whatever, you know. But the question is, I guess there's two questions. The question is how to go next level as well as stay resonant, right? Because it's like, instead of saying, you know, oh, we're doing Marxism, oh, our interests and classes and whatever, it's like, no, fuck what you heard. We're running Class of Consciousness, DeBoard Status, 68, Juiced Up, Baudrillard, Experimental Unit. You know, we're coming for the dreaming, right? We're coming for informal organization. We're coming for political theology. Like, we're coming for the conjuration of imbecile, right? Like, we have a bigger project, right? We have a bigger project, and it's harder to define, right? As hard, even as Marxism is impossible to define, this will be even more impossible to define. It will be self-consciously impossible to define. And so, you know, the whole thing in terms of turf wars, anyway, it's like scary as balls. Anyway, experimental units. But so yeah, it has everything to do with conceptual churn because we're using new concepts. We're not getting stuck in things. So like in terms of terrain, like, am I going to sit there and like argue with somebody that capitalism's actually bad and so that they should write their congressman to be anti-capital? Like, no, that's not where I think it's struggle. And in terms of class struggle, like, do I think that, what would I say? I don't think I need to defeat other people in order to win. So, I mean, maybe people would say that's because I have a certain class status. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like, fundamentally, like, if you just look at it in terms of world revolution, like, you're not going to fucking just kill everybody who holds nuclear weapons and then just take over for them, right? So you're going to have to infiltrate. You're going to have to convince. And so focus on that, right? Foreground that, because like there is no there's no realm of discontinuity, which leads to survival. Like, in the sense of like, you can't have a complete discontinuity of government because some things require it. So, but at the same time, I think the optimistic thing is to say that the power structure or whatever, like, it's not to say that it's secretly like radical or that it's just moral and it's just, you know, it's just good or whatever. It's like, no. Like, we're going to do subversion. We're going to do influence operations. Basically, we're going to see to it. Like, we're not just going to, I'm not telling anybody to trust anybody. But we don't have to fight, like, especially, we don't have to fight on certain terrains, right? So in terms of like, if you think about, or I mean, fighting, we don't have to act, right? We don't have to intervene, right? If we're going to make our intervention, like, we're making our humanitarian intervention, but it's really our inhuman intervention because we're inhuman. We don't do humanity anyway. But not in like this edgy way, right? It's like, you're too good to be confined to the concept of human. Anyway, this is just continuations with nominalism. Anyways, yeah. So it really is to see how much like we're monkeys with our hand in the jar and we can't let go of the concept. And so this is conceptual churn. It has to do with experimental unit in the sense because it's like, because experimental unit, you know, we do emergency response, which like is also a response to warfare, but we also do public worship and merrymaking and things of that nature. So these are also places where, again, you know, you need to churn through symbols and they can build on each other. Maybe that's where I'll leave you, like, with this last final thought. Like, a new symbol, and let me come back to, is it possible? Yeah. So let me come back to this. So like, an iteration of a symbol can contain an original symbol. So it's funny. I'm thinking of, theosophy. The symbol for theosophy contains the Star of David. It contains the swastika. It contains the Ouroboros or whatever. So, and it contains the Ankh, right? So, but that is in itself a new symbol, but it contains those other ones. So even as we're continuing to iterate, it's not to say that those old symbols are definitively going away. Baudrillard's saying we can extract things from discourse, but that's not to say they can't come back. And that's not to say that they can't be iterated on. So with that being said, we're going to end right here. Oh, I guess we can go until we're going to hit 2 hours exactly. And then that'll be it. So yeah, this will be the first stream that I will leave up. I really enjoy it, actually, just like doing it and doing screen sharing and just showing you all of the things. It's like, so this is the kind of stuff that I just think about all the time, and it just, I never get out of bed in the morning. That's not true. I kind of get out of bed, but I'm in such bad shape. I ran like half a mile today. My legs are dead. So things are not great, but we're working on it. And what else? Everything's great. Keep it frosty, Holmes. And let's see if this can do it exactly. Bye.